Prrrah! What's up my people, my name is Spicy and today I have 3 stories coming out of the subreddit prorevenge. As you know already, once we reach 2500 subscribers mark, I will be giving away 4 Amazon gift cards of either $25 or $50, or maybe 8 cards of $10 each, who knows? So make sure you are subscribed to the channel to stay tuned when the giveaway will happen. If you are having fun here, drop a fire emoji in the comments and like this video, it helps me grow this channel. Congratulations Fudge for the comment of the day. You won't pay for a lock change? Okay, we won't pay for your housing. I work in a customer service center in a local authority where I mainly deal with calls regarding booking and repairs for our council tenants. Things like dripping taps, no heating, etc. A woman calls in and tells me that she has lost the keys to her house and can't get in. I go through the usual process of getting up her address and explaining I can have someone out there in a couple of hours to change the locks. Due to property being unsecured, the woman is nice enough at first, but then completely flips as soon as I tell her that she will be charged for the repair. Due to her having lost the keys rather than them being stolen, she begins a tirade of swearing and demands that the work is done for free because she is on housing benefit and cannot afford it, as well as that it was actually her lodger who lost the keys, not her. After informing her she will still have to pay and a couple more minutes of shouting and swearing, she hangs up. I now have a few precious minutes to myself with no other calls where my brain stews on what just happened. I often deal with angry tenants, but they are for matters I understand, such as waiting for a long time for something which will have happened ages ago, not for paying for a lock change due to your own forgetfulness. It clicks and I know how to get my revenge. The woman calls back again as I expected she would, but rather than go through to repairs, she goes through to switchboard. As we are in the same room and about 2 meters apart, I can hear their conversation and know instantly that it is the same woman. The guy on switchboard says he needs to put her through to repairs, but she won't let him due to being told she would have to pay and wants to speak to someone else. I mime to him to put her on hold and explain to him that he should call our tenancy department, responsible for all tenants and their housing, and should be very clearly explain she is on housing benefit and her lodger lost her key. He calls tenancy, who ask him to confirm she has a lodger, and after doing so ask him to put her through for them to speak to her, and I knew I had gotten my revenge. For clarification, housing benefit is to help you pay for your housing as you can't afford it. One obvious rule is that you can have a lodger as you are obviously then earning additional income on top of your job to pay for your rent, and so should not be getting benefit. The member of the tenancy department obviously realized this, and I will say it is very likely that the tenant is having their status reviewed and could very well have her benefits cancelled, all because she will not pay for a lock change. Well, this is called karma, lady. You wanted to play the tenancy department in order to get benefit, but then have a lodger. And even without thinking that what were you doing is against the rules, you decided to act entitled regarding a lock change and mention that you have a lodger. Well, Karen, that was stupid. Not very smart of you. Other Karens must be ashamed of you. Maybe you don't deserve the name Karen after all. Maybe you're just stupid. Anyway. Duck my pay, lose yours. I work for a small company that repaired stained glass windows for churches, universities, government, and historical buildings domestically and abroad. Some high-profile jobs too. Anyway, there were not too many employees, some studio associates and 3 managers, one being myself, who oversaw different aspects of the operation. The owner, aka the drunk girl, was an awful human being, constantly lying to customers, saying she needed to order replacement glass for the job which cost this amount of money, but in reality she will buy way cheaper materials or already have said material that had been sitting for decades unused. One day, she informed me that I had broken a piece of glass of about 12 by 12 that she valued at $500. This will be important shortly. It is, in fact, true that pieces of stained glass can run that much and even for more, but I knew for a fact how much this piece cost because 2 weeks prior, she made me drive 6 hours round trip to pick it up, and I saw the invoice. A 3 by 3 sheet cost about $60, cheap stuff. After picking it up, I drove it to the drunk girl personal art studio at her house. At around 2 p.m., She was wasted, her teeth crimson with her bad homemade wine. She gifted us a bottle for Christmas one year. It was like someone rubbed grapes on their sweaty butt and stood over a bottle. Drip, 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 cork gifts. I get off track, I apologize. So I show up. She is wasted midday, and she makes me unload a total of $5,000 of stained glass that she bought for the company into her own personal art studio. She stumbles as she is showing me where to put it, and in the process messes up a setting that took about 2 months to place. A real slob. 2 weeks later, she says I broke a piece of glass worth about $500. Like I said earlier, and she then informs me that I will be deducted the amount from my paycheck. She would miss paychecks like she missed her mouth after the second bottle of wine. So not only was I not getting my full paycheck, but it would almost definitely be days later when she decided to show up and hand us our checks. I was not going to let her get away with this, and I certainly was not going to quit before I could get my revenge. Lucky for me, we put the invoices in a wall folder for her to reconcile when she decides to stumble in. The invoice was still in the folder, so when she left for her siesta, I took it out, photocopied it, and put the original back. The next day, she showed up. 2 days in a row? Her one cash must have been low. It happened every now and then. She hands me my paycheck minus $700. I knock on her office door and ask her, "Drunk girl, my paycheck is $700 short. Do you know what happened? You broke a priceless piece of glass. I had to pay for it somehow." Here's when the revenge comes in. I manage the materials coming in and out of the shop. I know what we need, how much we use, what we use it for, and all orders for future materials for future jobs. Friday at 4:45. Closing time is 5. Drunk girl, what glass? This panel that you picked up. There's no panel here. The one you brought to my house. Oh, I thought that was your personal material. Oh, I thought that was for your personal material. Because if it was for the company and paid with the company's money, you would have made me bring it here. I work from home. That's why I made you bring it to my house. Drunk girl, oh, okay. It's just I know the current jobs we have going on and all future jobs, and not one requires any of the material you bought for the shop. How I spend my money is not your concerns. Actually, it is literally the definition of my job. Cue Monday morning. I don't show up because I know she is not going to be there after a weekend bender. I call the Department of Labor and explain that I have been docked wages illegally and falsely. I then write the EPA and explain what I witnessed at her personal art studio. Illegal handling and dumping of lead. Lead came is what is used for stained glass windows. I then write to the IRS and explain that she is using company funds for personal expenses. I walked in the next day, told her I quit, found out she lost clients left and right because of the issues. She tried to sell the company to the remaining employees to no avail and eventually just closed shop. That's what you get. You wanted to scam the system, benefit of the IRS tax expenses deductible without actually paying the taxes on them, using it for your own personal benefit, cutting wages from your loyal and good employees just because you consume a lot of alcohol. To me, that's a no-no and you are a Karen. And the balls that she needed to actually try to sell the company to the remaining employees. Think about it for a second. The writer right here, he had an important role in the company. He was important and he was needed. Can you imagine how she treats the other employees if he was being treated this way? Bad, very bad. Shame on you, lady. The lawyer, the fabulous, and the geek. A few relatively unimportant details are fuzzed to obscure identity as this ended up a big deal. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I had just managed a promotion at work. I was now a manager who managed managers at a hotel of not insignificant renown. This meant I was at that point where despite having a boss above me in the same building, I was the absolute highest person most guests will ever talk to. Unfortunately, that also meant I got to handle the most noxious of people who were so insistent that their crap did not stink that they will not put their head out of their butt because it smelled too nice in there. One of her better corporate clients was a law firm who I will call Lawyer Factory. On a regular basis, we would have a new hire from Lawyer Factory stay with us for 1 or 2 months before they could find a suitable apartment in the city. Most of the new hires were slightly elitist but not particularly bad sorts. They would talk to front desk staff on occasion, mostly to brag about their watch collection or new Jaguar. But they would also give front desk staff a few local sports ball team tickets they got from the office. The target of my revenge was a newly minted law boy who I will call Dylan, as he looked like the kind of guy you would expect to be named Dylan. Law boy Dylan was very obviously new at the game, as he would come down for breakfast every day around 8:30 in a sweatshirt, jeans, and stocking cap. Part of our deal with Lawyer Factory meant their recruits had breakfast included with the room every day. At first, Dylan was a fairly approachable fellow, shaking hands with the front desk staff and taking time to talk about the most popular sports ball team in town, who was a favorite of everyone, including yours truly. Dylan and I had also spent a bit of time jawing about a few video games and anime. He was a casual fan, but it happened that his brother in college was a hardcore fan both of an obscure Asian online game and Dragon Ball Z, both of which were my big nerd out spots. Thanks to him, I met his brother in game, and fortune had it that we were both in guilds which went boss hunting together on a regular basis. Of course, this will not be a story about revenge if Dylan was really a likable guy all the time. Now, would it? Just before I continue this story, I just want to thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate you being here, and if you want to support me in this project, well, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel to get more of these videos and like this video. Simply because when you like a video and you comment on it, it helps me rank better. And when I rank better, I can get more viewers. And when I get more viewers, well, I can make better videos for you guys. All these videos are free for you. You're not paying a penny of it, but I am investing a lot of my time into these videos. I am not guilt tripping you. This is not what I'm doing. I just want to say, if you appreciate what I do here, just subscribe and leave a like if you appreciate what I do. But let's get back into the story. One day a few weeks into his stay, Dylan hit the lobby early on Monday just before 6 AM looking for coffee and breakfast a bit early. According to security footage, this is when things starting to break down. He pulled on the restaurant door to no avail as it would be locked for another 10 minutes. He pulled again with some frustrated mumbling that could not be heard clearly. It is also worth noting that Dylan's breakfast outfit plus a weekend without shaving left him looking not entirely unlike a transient man hoping to score some free coffee. At this point, my night manager, Marcus, decided to intervene. Marcus is very reliable, very flamboyantly gay, and very black, and he will scold me for only using one very for each of those. Marcus asked Dylan for ID as proof that he is a guest. Somehow, this must have been the worst insult Dylan has ever heard, as he decides this is time to lash out in the worst way. He started into a profanity-laced tirade filled with racial and homophobic slurs, along with rolling up his sleeve for enough to show a Confederate battle flag tattoo to display his contempt for Marcus. While security footage did not show this part, Marcus also testified that Dylan reeked of whiskey and cinnamon as if he had been pounded fireballs since 5 PM the day before. Marcus decided he was not going to have any of this. Step back and let one of our early bird morning staff handle the issue. When she stepped in, Dylan had no problem procuring ID for her, as well as a phone number that was not asked. By 8, Marcus was in my office venting about how he wanted to beat Dylan's little butt and unleashing other bits of choice profanity. I've got a rule when it comes down to troublesome guests. You can swear at me, you can hurl racial slurs at me, you can say whatever you want, and I will still make it a point to provide the best customer service possible. But post this with my staff and I will make you regret it. Dylan went to the latter route and he had to go. Well, as you might imagine, a lawyer being informed that it was on him to find new accommodations immediately did not go over well. First, he attempted to invoke tenant law, which was quickly shut down as he had not established 30 days of residency. Second, he implied that his employer would cease operations with us if he were evicted. Considering we had offered them a sweetheart deal far better than our rivals, this was not particularly likely and never came to fruition. When everything failed, he turned to me and begged me to not throw him out. No dice. Nobody calls my go-to night guy an NF without consequences. I'd like to say I was badass enough for him to bolt in fear of me, but I was not, and he did not. However, he was pretty quick to shut up when when Officer Smiley came in and requested his cooperation. First, I called Katie at Lawyer Factory HR. Katie is one of the nicest lady I've had the pleasure of working with. A quick discussion leads her to a decision that Dylan had stepped over a line. Within 2 weeks, Katie refused to acknowledge anything beyond the fact that Dylan was not employed at Lawyer Factory. Next, I called the State Bar Association. They are as tight-lipped as expected, although there was a clear air of exasperation from the representative, as if this was not the first she had heard the name Dylan Lawboy. Professional revenge is fine and dandy, but insulting my crew and showing off proof of being a treasonous son of a in my hotel asks for more. 3 weeks later, Dylan's brother is pulling tank duty and I am the king of heels, bringing the smackdown on a goat demon. His brother mentioned how Dylan had moved back home after his employer lost a client and did not need him anymore, and his potential apartment was not worth the trouble after all. Seems not working as a lawyer means it is pretty hard to make rent in a downtown loft. Brother also mentioned that mom told Dylan that if he wanted to stay at home, he would have that terrible graffiti taken off his shoulder immediately. The aftermath included a lawsuit, a few discussions with company legal, and a healthy dose of strategic fraud at a complete failure of his claim of defamation. The next hire from Lawyer Factory was a very likable seaman guy whose idea of flaunting his wealth was buying pizza for the staff and bringing it while singing "You're Welcome" from Moana. Total goofball and easily my favorite lawyer guest. Last I heard from brother, Dylan had a large tattoo removal scar and a job as a paralegal. Before I let you go away from the heat that you just received, I want to thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for liking the video, for commenting, for subscribing, and even for those who shares the videos. This really helped me a lot and I appreciate what you do for me. All of your effort will ultimately allow me to make better videos for you. I have a ton of ideas, but without support, I can get to this point. But until then, I wish you all a beautiful day and I hope that you are doing your best to reach your dreams. Live a fulfilled life, have fun, and love the people around you.